Well, greetings and salutations to all of you. I thank you so much for your interest in the 2020 mission trip to Ghana. And I'm sorry that you weren't able to join me in person for one of the interest meetings, but thank God for technology that allows us to actually still share information. So I want to walk you through this presentation as quickly and as efficiently as I possibly can. We're headed to Ghana. Ghana is in Western Africa, and it's one of the coastal countries. Most of our time is going to be spent in Accra. Accra is the capital city of Ghana, and right there you can see it in the picture. Following that arrow, it sits right there on that southern coast of the nation, and we're going to be right there in that coastal city for most of the time. This picture is taken from a mountaintop area looking over Accra. As a matter of fact, it's taken from the retreat center where we'll be staying during our trip. And if you look very carefully, you'll notice that it's actually looking out toward the ocean because that's the ocean right there at the southern tip of the city. So it's a beautiful and amazing place to be. Lots and lots of people, lots and lots going on in Accra, and we're going to be there. How did I get involved in all of this stuff, you may ask? Well, I always dreamed of Africa, just like most African Americans. I've always dreamed of going to the motherland and seeing where we've all come from. And it was also my mother's dream to go to Africa and to minister in Africa. And one day I was at a radio interview here in Virginia Beach, and I met a man named Dr. Clifton Clark. He was at that time a professor at Regent University, and he was also a pastor of a local church in Norfolk, Virginia. He invited me to his ministry to fellowship with his church for a few times, and he also invited me to go with him to Ghana. He was going on mission trips every year, and the first year that he invited me, I wasn't able to go, but that second year I felt the prompting of the Holy Spirit to actually pursue it and to go on that trip. So I went with him and his team, and it really it was an amazing blessing. I didn't know how I would go because I could not afford the trip just out of pocket, but the Lord touched a lot of people's hearts, and they helped me get there. A lot of people rallied behind me and supported the trip, and I was able to go. And when I tell you it changed my life, believe me, it changed my life. Seeing Africa changes you. For an African American, it just really changes your view in so many ways. It changes your way of thinking. It changed so much about me. I fell in love with Ghana, fell in love with Accra, and particularly fell in love with the village of Nyame, which is where I go every year. I go to this particular village and serve at a small village school there, Nyame Christian School. And these photos are of some of the kids who attend that school and of the village itself. And so it really had a major impact on me. And here's some of the ways that it changed me. First of all, it gave me an increased gratitude for my conveniences. There are so many things that as Americans we grow up with that we feel are necessities. But going over there, I had the opportunity to recognize what are my necessities and what are actually conveniences. And it made me a lot more grateful for the things that I took for granted. And I realize now that they're conveniences. I don't have to have all of that stuff. It also gave me a new appreciation for my heritage. I grew up in rural South Carolina, coastal South Carolina, right outside of Charleston. And that area is a Gullah region. And so much of what we did and the way we lived when I was a child, I always, saw it as being Gullah or Geechee culture. But going to Ghana, I recognized so much of it in Ghanaian culture. And I came to understand that Gullah culture is Western African culture. Really, it's pretty much it's pretty much one and the same. It's amazing how much of my upbringing I saw right there in front of me. it really, really, really blessed my life to see it. And so it gave me a whole new appreciation for my heritage. It shifted my worldview because as Americans, we have our own view of our world, of our lives, of the world around us. And going to Ghana really has an impact on your worldview. It helped me to see America from another perspective. Hearing Africans talk about America really kind of shifted my view of America to an extent. So it had a major impact on how I view the world, and it redefined my worship. It certainly redefined my worship because African worship is worship at a whole new level. It is worship at another level. I thought I was charismatic. I don't measure up. So it definitely redefined my worship, and it challenged my theology. One of the things that I recognize going to Africa is um, Africa is primarily a polytheistic um, region where there were many gods that were worshipped and served and revered um, in African culture. And as an American, I grew up in a Christian culture, a Christian environment, and kind of saw everything from the perspective of Christianity. And being in Africa, uh, I recognize that you can't take for granted who God is, because who I call God in America, someone else may call a completely different entity God. And in Africa, in African worship, I recognize that many times they use the name of God, Yahweh or Jehovah or Elohim. They use his name in worship. And that's important when you are um, in a polytheistic region. It's important to identify what God you're talking about. So, things like that just kind of challenge my theology. And yeah, even and I don't want to get deep with this, but even with recognizing that in the Psalms, it spoke often about the name of the Lord. And I always just automatically associated that as Jesus. But it's in the Psalms. Jesus wasn't born yet. Who is the psalmist talking about when he speaks that the name of the Lord is a strong tower? What name is he referring to? Things like this just kind of really shifted the way I view um, culture, my theology rather. So worship in Africa is powerful and amazing. I want to show you just a little bit of a worship service at a church that we'll be visiting while we're there. Just absolutely powerful worship. And that clip wasn't praise and worship, that was a response to the word that they had just heard. The preacher had just preached, and that was their response to the word. That's Church of Pentecost in Nansemond. And we're going to go and visit there and fellowship there. I can't wait for you to meet these people and worship with them. So here's what our trip is going to look like. Um, the plan is that we will arrive in Ghana on a Saturday. We'll arrive on that Saturday, and that'll be a day of rest and prayer and reflection. Get a chance to kind of sit back, let your body catch up to the time. because of course we'll be a few hours ahead of East Coast time, so you'll need time for your body to kind of adjust and take some time for prayer. And I recommend doing some journaling, just kind of um, um, start jotting down your experience, and then that Sunday we'll go and worship, and we'll spend time in worship, and that Sunday afternoon we'll do a little bit of driving around and go and grab lunch, and we'll see a little bit of this of the city. Monday will be our feature day for sightseeing in Ghana. We'll go see a few of the key sites, and we'll go and also visit the school where we'll be serving. And I want to take you to the school on that Monday, because that Tuesday and Wednesday we're going to be serving at the school. But I want you to be past the culture shock. I want you to be ready to serve when we get there on that Tuesday and that Wednesday. So we'll serve at the school on those 2 days. We'll be there for probably 4 or 5 hours each of those days, working with the teachers, working with the students, and we'll specify what we're going to do as we get a little closer to the trip, and as we see who all is going with us on this trip, and what your skills are, what your background is, what you can offer in this setting. We'll assign people based on their strengths, their skills, their background, their work, or things of that nature. We'll assign everybody in that manner, and then we'll serve at the school in the best way we possibly can. Then on that Thursday, we're going to take a drive down to Cape Coast. That's another coastal town, but there are some things that I need you to see in Cape Coast, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a few minutes. But I want to take everybody to Cape Coast, do a little sightseeing there, and that's a trip that I believe was going to also really change your life. And then that Friday, it's going to be of some time of shopping that morning, and then departure for home that Friday afternoon or Friday evening. And that way, everybody should get back home on that Saturday, give you a chance to kind of let your bodies reset to your the time clock here, or the time here, and perhaps go to worship at your home churches on that Sunday. So that's what the trip is going to look like, and I want us to have the opportunity to see some of these amazing sites in Ghana, the Kwame Nkrumah Museum, and the tremendous soccer field that they have there, and you've got to go to a craft market. You have to go to an African craft market. I want to take you there so you can see some of the amazing things that they sell, and so you can buy gifts and items for yourself, items for your friends, souvenirs. It's all there at the craft market. We're going to go to Nyamebechwe. This is that village, and we're going to spend some time there, and not only be at the school, but I want you to get a chance to meet people in the village and speak to them and see how they live and see what village life is like. I tell you, when I got there the first time, I thought, oh, my heart broke. I felt like, oh my, how can people live like this? This is so sad. But as I got to understand the beauty and the richness of village life, it really changed my perspective. These people have a story to tell, and I want you to hear their stories. The village where we're going is really blessed and fortunate because they actually have a pump. What you see here on the left is a pump of it's a where they can get fresh water there in the village, and people come from other villages to get water from them, because a lot of villages don't have any fresh water, and they have to walk miles to go get water. So this village is really blessed to have a pump there. And on your right, you see some of the friends of the village, little goats. You'll see plenty of goats and plenty of chickens all over the village. They are friends of the village. They supply goat milk, and they supply eggs, and eventually they supply goat meat and chicken feet. So, okay, let me stop. All right. This to your left here, this is actually the village convenience store where they have some of their goods, um, canned goods and things of this nature. People sell here, and I'm not sure what who runs the shop. I've never seen anybody there at the store, but um, that's a part of the village. And to your right, that's the village. wash house or shower where they'll go with their a bucket of water and wash here in this area. And so it's a community shower. No running water. It's a community shower. Yeah, in the village there's an outhouse. It was built for the school, and the villagers share it. So yeah, it's a rural African village, but we will have the opportunity to go there and to spend some time with these kids, to love on them, to share um, God's love with them, to share some of our gifts and talents with them, share technology. The young lady on the right took her cameras. A lot of these kids had never seen a nice professional camera, and they got a chance to hold her camera and look through the lens and take some pictures and have pictures taken of them. The guy on the right's just playing games with the kids. They loved it. And so just the opportunity to go and be with them and to share with them and to love on them, it's going to be absolutely powerful. We're going to spend time with the teachers and the educators. Here on the left, you see one of the teacher's aides actually teaching a class. And I want us to have an opportunity, those of you who are educators or who've worked in the education area, can have an opportunity to actually share some teaching practices with the teachers there. Some of the things that have made you successful in your classrooms, they can really use that information. And on the right, had the opportunity to share some technology training with the staff, showing them computers for some of them for the very first time being at a computer. And so, I mean, what you know of technology can be a real blessing to them. If we just go and kind of share what we know, it can really help move education forward at this school. And I want you to go to Cape Coast and see this amazing place. Cape Coast Castle was eye-opening for me because it was the place where African slaves left from when they were being brought to America. When those slave catchers, um, some of them Spanish or Dutch or Portuguese or British, whoever was capturing the slaves in Western Africa, particularly in Ghana, they would walk them from hundreds of miles to Cape Coast and bring them here in this castle and shackle them down in chains and hold them until the slave ships would arrive. And then they would take them through this castle and walk them out to the slave ship, shackle them into those ships, and bring them on that long middle passage. And we want to see these corridors where our forefathers walked, where our ancestors walked, and hear the amazing stories and see this door that they walked through, which was, as you see on the left, the door of no return, because they knew once they walked out that door, they would never come back and see Africa again. But now on the other side of that door, there's a new sign. That's what the sign you see on the right there, the door of return, because now they can come back home. Their descendants can come back home. Just amazing stories. Oh, it gives me chills even now after hearing it for years. It still gives me chills. So here's how I afforded the trip. When I went the first time, I didn't know how I could do it, but I took what little I had and I invested it in this trip. And then I started a fundraiser. I used GoFundMe for my first trip, and now I use Give Send Go, which is very similar to GoFundMe, kind of the same general practice, except that Give Send Go is by Christians and it's primarily for missions, outreach, Christian fundraising campaigns. So I started a fundraising campaign, and people donated. I looked for sponsors, people who I thought um, could give, people who I knew had access to the kind of resources, the kind of money that could really help me make a trip like this become a reality. And I reached out to them, and they responded, and they gave. And God showed up right in the nick of time. I tell you, when I tell you He showed up on time, He showed up on time. And every year, what I need for the trip, God always provides. So here's when we're looking at going. Um, we're going to leave on Friday, the 10th of July in 2020. That means that you have more than a year now to plan and get ready for this trip. But we want to leave on that Friday, and we want to get back on Saturday the 18th. And that way, I wanted to make this kind of a missions 101 trip, not a 2 week or 2.5 week trip like I would typically take. But I wanted to make this a short trip so that um, even persons who don't have a whole lot of vacation time can probably have enough vacation time for this trip. You would need to take 6 days of vacation if you normally work Monday through Friday. Then you would need a Friday and then the following week as well. And so yeah, it's something that I wanted to design it so that it's obtainable for people to be able to go. And we would rent a van and leave from here in Hampton Roads. We'll find a good meeting place where people can park cars or be dropped off, and we'd meet and jump on a van and take our bags with us and drive up to DC. And we're going to depart from Dulles Airport in DC. And if you're traveling with us from outside of the Hampton Roads area, I'll work with you to coordinate our departure schedule and our arrival schedule there so that you can fly from wherever you're coming from and meet us there. And perhaps meet us at our layover, because more than likely we'll have a layover in Brussels, Belgium, or Amsterdam. And we can probably meet up at the layover and then do the last leg of the flight together. So that's what the trip is going to look like. That's when we would go. And here's what you would need for a trip like this. Number one, you definitely have to have a passport with at least 6 months of validity remaining on the passport. You've got to have at least 6 months remaining on the passport after you return. So your passport has to um, has to be valid beyond, let's see, July 18th. So that would be what, January 18th? At least January 18th, 2021. Your passport has to be valid through January 18th, 2021. And if your passport is going to expire before then, you will need to have your passport renewed, because you need a passport with at least that much validity remaining on it in order to get your visa from the Embassy of Ghana. You have to have a visa from the Embassy of Ghana to get into the country of Ghana. Um, and the visa is going to cost maybe, generally it costs $60 from the Embassy of Ghana. And we're going to get our visas together as a group. They're You can definitely order it online individually and have it delivered to your home. But in order to get your visa, you have to send your passport in the mail. They would, along with your visa application and your funds and a self-addressed stamped return envelope, and they would process your application, process your visa, put your visa in your passport, and ship it back to you. I've heard some horror stories of people whose um, passports got lost in the mail and they didn't get it back or didn't get it back in time. We don't want that to happen. So I'm going to do a day trip and drive to the Embassy of Ghana to get everybody's visas, and that way we know we get them back in time and we don't have to worry about anything getting lost. And so you're also going to need a yellow card. You need a yellow fever vaccination, and once you are vaccinated for yellow fever, you get a yellow card, and you need that to get into Ghana. You need to make sure your tetanus shots are up to date, as well as any other vaccinations. You want to make sure all your vaccinations are up to date. If you are wise, you would speak with your doctor, let them know that you're going to Ghana, and make sure you have clearance from your doctor, especially if you have any kind of medical conditions or if you are under the doctor's care for any reason. You want clearance from your doctor to make sure that you're not going to put yourself in harm's way. Medical insurance is very important. You want to make sure that you have trip insurance for this trip, so that if something happens to you and you need to go see a doctor while we're in Ghana, you have insurance, so that you can get the medical assistance that you need while you are there. So you need that kind of insurance. If your current insurance carrier will provide coverage while you are there, then I guess you'll be fine. but we're also going to be shopping for trip insurance that is very affordable for everybody on the trip so that you can have additional coverage if you'd like. And it would be at very minimal cost, but very effective insurance. You want to have, you definitely have to have anti-malaria medication because malaria is a big deal in Ghana. It's a significant threat, and it is important that you have anti-malaria meds. And it is a pill that you would take every day. You take it, I believe, a day or two before you leave. You take it the entire time that you're there, and you take it for about 2 weeks after you get back. Um, Malaria is very dangerous, and it can kill, and it's transferred by mosquitoes. So you also want to have mosquito repellent. It's very important, and I'm not talking about the lightweight kind that we generally use here when you're going to be in the backyard. I'm talking about deep woods off, the kind of mosquito repellent that has that heavy DEET composition. It's the strong insect repellent. You want that on this trip. And you need to have anti-diarrhea meds, um, medication for diarrhea, because you're going to be eating foods that you don't eat all the time, and it may be a little challenging for your body. And these anti-diarrhea meds can be a lifesaver, and it's much better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. Now, here's what you can expect. We're going to be staying at Hepzibah Christian Center. Hepzibah Christian Center, and it is a retreat center that was built and designed specifically for ministers and missionaries. When they come to Ghana, they can go there at this retreat center. It's a really nice facility, and I've stayed there just about every time I've gone, and I really like it. It's we won't be staying and spending nights in the village or in the huts or in the woods or anything like that. The accommodations are going to be similar to like a monastery, or but it is a retreat center. It's a very nice facility, and it's a bed and breakfast kind of facility. So meals will be served there at the facility, and we've got not only that, but conference rooms that we'll have access to and things of that nature. So great accommodations we'll have, and you should be very comfortable. Um, and Speaking of the accommodations, just so you know, we'll be doing some room sharing. So we're going to try to set it up so that we're all two to a room, unless you want to pay specifically for an individual room to make sure that you have your own room. We can do that. But otherwise, we'd like to set it up so that it's two people to a room, so that you can share your quarters. It helps with not getting lonely while we're away. It also helps having somebody that you can share with and debrief with and build relationship with on this trip. So it's going to be fun accommodations. Africa is a place where you hear music all the time. The rhythm of Africa is a very real thing, and you're going to feel the rhythm. You're going to hear music from the time you get out of the airport until the time we go back. There's always music playing somewhere, and it's amazing. It's gonna blow your mind. Um, Ghanaian traffic is no joke. Ghanaian driving is scary. I'll just leave it at that. So you can expect a lot of traffic, but the weather and the temperature is going to be kind of tropical, kind of like it is in Hampton Roads, right around um, 80s, 80s, maybe 90s, but more so 80s. Um, and It's going to probably be the rainy season, but I've never had it so that it rained all day. It's tropical rain, so the weather rolls in and rolls right on out. And so it may rain for an hour, hour and a half, and then the rain is gone for an hour, and then there may be some more rain for another hour, and then it's going again for another hour, and that kind of rain. But it can hit hard and heavy. I've seen flash flooding happen there very fast. Um, so you want to definitely be prepared for rain, but it's going to be hot and warm. Just so you know, I'm going to be in t-shirt and shorts just about the whole trip. So um, the commerce system in Africa is a lot of panhandling, a lot of peddlers. You'll see people selling items at the street corners, at the traffic light, walking up between the cars in the highway, selling food and um, knickknacks and all kinds of stuff. Just that's the commerce system of Africa. That is the way it works. When I saw it the first time, I thought this was the saddest thing in the world. Now I understand it's the coolest thing in the world for you to be able to do your grocery shopping, shop for your spouse, get your breakfast, your dinner, all that right in your car on the way to work or on the way back from work. You can buy you a whole outfit right there in your car on the way to work, on the way back from work. It's kind of cool. It's going to be amazing when you see it. Um, but while we're there, I do recommend don't eat uncooked vegetables because they do not have sanitary drinking water in Africa out of the faucet. And when the food is just washed in regular water, it is really not the best thing for you. So I highly recommend that whatever you eat, it's cooked. And the water that you drink, you want to drink bottled water. We will have plenty of bottled water for during the whole trip, and I highly recommend that you use bottled water for everything, brushing your teeth, everything. Bottled water. Any water that goes in your mouth needs to be out of bottled water. And with that in mind, Africans understand, the bacteria that's going on around there, and when they cook, they make sure they cook food well. They cook it good. They cook it and then cook it some more to make sure that they cook all the bacteria and stuff out of the food. So sometimes the food is overcooked for my taste. So I just want to prepare you for that. But I want to encourage you to bring snacks. Bring the little um, breakfast bars or the things of that nature, healthy snacks that you can eat between meals, because sometimes when we're traveling or working or serving out in the school or going back and forth up and down the highways between meals, you might get a little hungry, and we're not stopping at McDonald's. So bring you some snacks so that you won't be too hungry for too long. And we're going to be on a mission trip, so sometimes things change, and you just got to roll with it. And when I tell you, again, we're going to be in Africa, so nobody's going to be in a rush. So don't you be in a rush. Just know that we'll get where we're going, and we'll do what we're going to do. But that's what you'd expect. But the accommodations are nice. These photos are photos from the retreat center where we'll be staying. So as you can see, it's going to be a very nice area, nice grounds. It's a beautiful place. And the streets, the traffic, it's real interesting. This is just how it looks when you're driving through the streets of Africa.
Oh, okay.
You see the kids in the uniforms, they're coming from school. You see all these little buses, they call them trotros. That's the transit system. And that's what it looks like. Just a brief little look. But I tell you, the food is amazing. Once you get used to African food, you realize just how it's delicious. Those bananas, as you can see, a bunch of bananas right in the palm of my hand. Those are the smallest bananas I've ever seen in my life, but the most delicious bananas I've ever had. Just delicious. And over there on the right, I was eating some okra stew with some fufu. Yeah, and I didn't eat much of the fufu. You want to know what fufu is? I'll show you when we get to Africa. But there's always dancing and always music. And this is when we got for one of the trips, when we got there, they had what's called a Durbar for us, which is kind of just a big cultural celebration to essentially thank us for coming and to show us a little bit of their heritage. And this is a little bit of how it went. young lady that just walked out in the front with the headdress on, that's the headmistress of the school. Oh yeah, they all dance. You can tell he just wanted to stay in front of the camera, right? Always lots of dancing going on. Always lots of singing going on. Absolutely amazing. He's such a cute little guy. They love it when we dance with them. And so yeah, when I go, I'm always dancing. This culture of dancing is not just in the village, but it's in the church. This is a ministers' conference. All the men and women of God, and you see them getting it in. One of the things that I love is the fact that it's not just the women dancing, but the men don't mind dancing before the Lord. So you're going to hear a lot of singing, lots of dancing, but it's not just all in languages that you don't understand. You hear some English too. So here's the big question that everybody always wants to know. What is it going to cost? Well, your total cost will be somewhere in that neighborhood of $2,500. And I say about $2,500 because that's the most that I can see it costing you. My goal is to get that cost down for you. The flight would be somewhere in the $1,300 range. I think that if we all get our tickets early and get a group rate, we can get that flight cost closer to $1,000. And that's my goal, to help everybody get their flights closer to $1,000. The lodging, ground transportation, and meals, most of the meals, or some of your meals will be included in this, will be right around $1,200. And we're going to try to get that cost down a little bit as well. And that way, the total cost would be significantly less than $2,500. I'm hoping to be able to get it down to $2,000 for everybody. And I also want to recommend that you bring an additional $500 to $600 with you for additional spending. That's for additional meals. When we stop and do lunch at different places, those meals would not be included in the price that you paid. So you would want to be able to purchase your own lunch. And for any shopping that you want to do and any tourist attractions that you want to go to, that's not already covered. We want to cover as much of it as we can inside of the base, that base cost. But that additional $500 to $600 would cover any additional things that we do. So that's the most I can see it costing, the absolute most. And just some recommendations from me. I do not recommend taking cash over there. A lot of times when people take international trips, they think take a lot of cash. go over there and exchange it. That's not the best way to do this, not in my opinion and not in my experience. I highly recommend that you just, when you get there, take your bank card, go to a bank and get out the cash that you need and just what you need. Get what you know you're going to spend. And then if you need some more, go get some more. And that way you're not stuck with a whole lot of Ghanaian cash at the end of the trip. Talk with your bank before you go. Find out what the policy of your bank is. If there are international transaction fees, or if there are none. If there's a travel card that your bank offers, so that you can use a separate card or a separate account, so that you don't have international transaction fees while you're traveling. There are things that your bank may offer that you may not be aware of. So I highly recommend that you have a conversation with your bank. If you have a bank, that's an international bank, it can make this trip very easy for you. So definitely check with your bank about all these kinds of things. Talk with your banking officer and find out what they have to offer you and what you have available for you. If you have any questions whatsoever, please email me, Michael M. Smith Ministries at gmail.com. That is Michael M. Smith Ministries at gmail.com. Email me. I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have or to give you any additional details. Or you can feel free to call me, 757-342-8485. And I'll be, again, happy to answer any questions you have and to help you make sure that things go very smoothly for you on this trip. Thank you for listening. I hope I didn't take too long. And have a fantastic day.